So, as I said, there's so much unpacking to do in each of it. And the first thing I wanted to mention is about this whole idea of oral transmission. So the reason why it actually sounds like a fairy tale or the Bible is that when you think about it, back in the day when the Buddha was alive, um, for one thing, he was a nobility. So the common people would not have been able to see him at all, right? So I don't know if you've seen recently, I haven't seen it yet, but there's a Tom Hanks movie on Netflix called News of the World, right? And this is like in the 1800s, I believe, in which Tom Hanks portrays this, what his job is. He goes from town to town reading the news of the world. And for the vast majority of the people, they're illiterate. And so this is the only way that they get information. So similarly, back, if you go back even further to the time of the Buddha, this becomes a very important way of learning for the average person. Netflix had until 2019, they had a series called The Buddha, and I loved it. It was basically what I said was it was Buddha meets Bollywood, and I've been trying to find it or get it somehow, but I can't find it anywhere. If anybody can find a copy of The Buddha, I'd love to find out. It was a 52 series on the life of the historical Buddha, and it very much told in a fashion of storytelling. And there's so much drama that when we normally talk about the life of the Buddha, we see this very serene, peaceful, but when you see something like what they did, there was a lot of drama within the royal palace, and people trying to backstab somebody else, and they had some wonderful characters. But in this series, there was this. So every once in a while, they would have this guy, a very comical guy, in the middle of the village, and he would be telling the accounts of the Buddha, and he would be basically doing a dance like, is it called the Bhangra dance, or the dance that the guy in where was it, Yukon or Northwest Territories became very famous for here in Canada. But this guy would basically go into a song and dance on this show, and at first I thought, oh, this is really strange, that here in the middle of the show they're doing this. But then I began to realize, you know what? This is probably how people got their news as well as entertainment at the same time. It's basically a minstrel who is informing what's going on at the royal palace, because the average person, as I said, would not have had any contact with the nobility. And then after the Buddha passed away as well, I think it was evident that as the stories are told, they become lore, and they have a wonderful way of embellishing these stories. But there's a whole universe that's associated with it. I don't know about you guys, but I must admit I'm a Marvel fan. Maybe I don't know if you're into this, but they call it Marvel Comic Universe, and there's all these. You can watch them now on Disney Plus. There's all these movies and TV shows you can watch, and they tell this whole story of this universe with all these superheroes. But when I read the life of the Buddha, there's actually a whole universe that they're talking about as well. And so, just the first page in itself, there's so much information in there. So the first thing that we have is it starts off by talking about this ascetic named Sumida, right? And he's lamenting people were destined to unending life of suffering in this world. Well, so the question that came to my mind was then, well, what's the backstory of this Sumida? Who is Sumida, right? And so first thing you have to know is that, so Sumida eventually becomes the Buddha, right? He's born into this world. But there's a whole backstory to Sumida himself. And it's said that Sumida was in a place called Amaravati. Now, Amaravati, I don't think exists in this world that we know of. Okay. But, and in this Amaravati, there is a Buddha called the Dipankara Buddha. And so the story of Sumida is that he was actually from a very, very incredibly wealthy family. And he was very well learned. And what happens is his parents pass away and he becomes the sole heir to the wealth of his parents. And he asks his treasurer of the parents, he says, well, how come my parents didn't take their wealth with them? And the treasurer tells him, well, you know, as wealthy as they are, they can't take it with them when they pass on. And this is a real eye-awakening experience for Sumida, and he realizes the folly of our existence. And so he decides he's going to give away his wealth. And he opens up one of his storehouses and he starts handing out the wealth, all the jewels and etc. in that storehouse. But in 7 days, he's not able to even empty out one storehouse. And he has literally thousands of storehouses. So he's completely what's the word I'm looking for? Exacerbated by the situation. And so he goes to the king and asks him if he will renounce his wealth and he will give everything to the people. All he wants is to go off and become a hermit or an ascetic. So he actually goes off in the mountains. And the king is a Shakra, which is also Indra. Indra is the Hindu name, Shakra is the Sanskrit name. But Shakra tells one of the other deities to build Sumida a hermitage where he can go and contemplate on things. So Sumida goes off into the mountains and he contemplates, and he actually attains a level of bliss, if you will. But one day he comes out of the mountains in search for food, and he notices the village people, they're all busy working. They're trying to fill potholes in the road with gravel, and they're doing it manually. But they all seem very happy. And they're building in the center of the village this, I guess, building. And so Sumida is curious and asks him what's going on. And that's when he's told that this Dipankara Buddha is coming to the village. And Sumida realizes how rare it is that a Buddha should be coming. So he joins the villagers and he starts helping them fill the potholes. But before they could finish, Dipankara, along with his entourage, they actually come into the village. And so Sumida sees this, and he lays in front of the Buddha and says, please, I think this part is written in the book, right? He tells the Dipankara to walk over him. Now, from what I see, that we hear of the phrase giving the shirt off one's back. Well, this is taking it to another level, right? Lying your body in front of Dipankara and his entourage. And at that moment, Sumida is actually, he's making a vow. Okay, so initially what happened, Sumida left his home and his wealth because he found that there was suffering in the world and that everything was, all the wealth you could have, you can't take it with you. So he had a personal awakening of suffering. Okay, so it starts off as a personal awakening, but by the time he's laying his body in front of Dipankara, he vows that he wants to attain enlightenment to save all beings, right? And Dipankara is impressed by this. So he forecasts that in the future, this Samhita will eventually come back to the world of suffering and then become Shakyamuni Buddha, right? So incidentally, Dipankara Buddha, who is Dipankara Buddha? Well, he comes out in a number of sutras, including one that's very important to our teaching, the larger sutra on Amidah. And in the beginning of that one, the larger sutra of Amidah, they talk about Amidah before he becomes Amidah Buddha. And he is this bodhisattva. And what it says in the larger sutra, it says, in the distant past, countless inconceivable and innumerable kalpas ago, Dipankara Tathagata appeared in the world, having guided countless sentient beings towards emancipation and enabled them to attain the way. He passed into nirvana. So it says in the larger sutra that this Dipankara appeared, and then there are 53 other Buddhas that appear after him. And then it comes to the one just before Amidah Buddha. But if we translate Dipankara, it means one who lights the torch, one who lights the torch. So even though it doesn't come out and say it out loud, there's inference that Dipankara may have been the first Buddha, okay? Because one who lights the torch sort of sounds like the person that starts it off, right? But it doesn't necessarily say that, so we can't say that for sure. It's just that many kalpas ago. Incidentally, I've mentioned before, kalpa is a measurement of time, and there are different ways of describing it. One of them is that if you have a large stone that is 14 kilometers in length, 14 kilometers in width, and 14 kilometers in height, and once in every 3 years, a heavenly being comes down from the heavens and has long sleeves like what I have, and wafts over that stone and wipes their sleeve over the stone. The number of years for that action of that heavenly being, so every time the heavenly being swipes over the stone with the friction, a very minute fraction of it is eroded away, right? And so the number of years it takes for that stone to disappear, once in 3 years, this heavenly being comes down. So the number of years it takes for it to disappear is 1 kalpa, okay? The other one is that you have a storehouse, a warehouse, that's 14 kilometers by 14 kilometers by 14 kilometers, and it's filled with poppy seeds. And once every 3 years, a small bird comes down and takes 1 poppy seed out. So the number of years it takes for that storehouse to be emptied of the poppy seed is 1 kalpa. So there are different ways of measuring it, but it's a length of time. So if you can imagine many kalpas ago, basically an infinite long time ago, right? So this Dipankara comes out and he foretells of this Sumida. And then it says that the Sumida goes under arduous practice, and then he gets to a point he gets to the ranking of being able to become a Buddha, and he is then goes to what we call Tusita Heaven, right? So there's another word. Now I'm going to go off on a whole different tangent. Tusita Heaven. So where is Tusita Heaven, right? So in the Buddhist cosmology, and now I have to share with you this. I am going to share with you. And by the end of the talk, you'll realize that you've actually, well, indirectly, you've encountered Tusita Heaven, okay? So this is Tanka. A Tanka is generally associated, you can all see this drawing, can you? Okay. The Tanka is generally associated with Tibetan Buddhism or in Nepal and Bhutan, but they're usually Buddhist drawings. And this is one of the most famous tankas that you'll find. It's a depiction of what we call the 6 realms of suffering or 6 realms of desire. It's also basically the talking about life and death. So I'm going to briefly go over this, and this actually has to do with Tusita Heaven as well. Okay, so in the center of this tanka, this drawing, you have a pig and a bird and a snake. Okay, I wonder if I could. Okay, you can see the pig and the bird and the snake in the center here. Okay, this is depicting what we call greed, anger, and ignorance or stupidity, right? I talked about in my Dharma talk recently about how we're filled with gas, right? Greed, anger, and stupidity. Interestingly enough, the pig was associated in India as being a stupid animal because it sleeps in dirty places and will eat anything. So they associate the pig. Although actually pigs have been found to be very intelligent animals. In fact, people actually keep them as pets now, right? But that's where it comes from. And then the bird is depicting greed because it's never satiated, always wanting more. And of course, the snake is anger because it will rear up and bite, at it. So that in the center, this is what we call the 3 poisons of greed, anger, and stupidity. And then around that, you have karmic actions. And there are, on the right-hand side, these are karmic actions that will lead you to the 3 underrealms, if you will. And then on the left-hand side, these are karmic actions that will lead you to the 3 upper realms. Okay, so these 6 realms are all part of what we call samsara or suffering. So it's not Buddhahood. And just to start off, incidentally, I will send you after the lecture all this information. I do have a Word document with this information along with the picture. So I will send you all this at the conclusion of the lecture. I didn't send it prior to because I wanted people sort of focusing on this as opposed to on a paper. But in the 6 realms of suffering, you have at the bottom here, this is called hell. And hell is depicted exactly as you'd imagine. There's one guy here, he has his tongue is pulled out and it's very, very large. That was for lying. So he went to the hell that they pulled out his tongue. And there are also all sorts of other gruesome depictions. And then just beside hell, there is what we call the hungry ghosts. And you see these individuals with a pot bellies from malnutrition, and they've got the pinhole-sized mouths. And so this is called the realm of hungry ghosts. And one goes there because of their own vice, their own greed. They end up going there. And then over on the left-hand side here, this is a realm of beasts, okay? So these three realms are called the under realms. The beasts, they're considered under realms because they basically are said that they live only through instinct. They don't have a conscience, per se, okay? And then above that realm, though, you have the three upper realms, and you have, on the right-hand side, you have the human realm, and on the left-hand side, this is called Ashura, or fighting spirit, okay? And then the final, in the top center here, is the realm of the devas, okay? And in this realm of the devas, so this is the uppermost realm in suffering, okay? Around these six realms is also what we call the six links of the dependent origination. And I couldn't figure it out from this picture because it's different from what I'm used to. But the six links of dependent origination will be coming up in our reading. When the Buddha attained enlightenment, he awakens to this six realms of, or the 12 links of the dependent origination. So, and then the creature that is holding all of this, this creature represents impermanence. So all this wheel is constantly changing, going round and round in circles. Okay? And then up above, you see the Buddha pointing to the beauty of the moon. So there, what the Buddha is saying, that one can get out of this existence of samsara. And what's also very interesting about this drawing is that in each of the realms that you have here, do you notice something? Like this person here, 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 this person here. There's a Buddha in every realm. Even in hell, there's a Buddha. Okay, so this is actually where Buddhism differs greatly from, say, Christianity, just in the way that we define things. So in Christianity, if one goes to hell, it's for eternity, right? You're damned for all eternity. Whereas in Buddhism, hell is also one realm of suffering. And so there is an opportunity or a chance of people getting out of that, okay? So anyways, getting back, so in this realm of the Deva, okay, it's said that there is this mountain, and it's called Mount Sumeru. Okay, actually, this actually predates Buddhism. It comes from Hinduism, and it's actually the formal name is Meru, and Su means excellent or wonderful. So it's wonderful Mount Meru in Hinduism, but in Buddhism we just call it Sumeru. Mount Sumeru. And on this Mount Sumeru, there are different realms of existence. And you can see how it's tiered at the bottom here. It's sort of shaped like an hourglass, where it tapers in the middle, and then it expands again on the top here, okay? Now, in this realm of the Devas, there's actually six realms, six heavenly realms that exist in this realm of the Devas. Okay? Two of them are what we call terrestrial heavenly realms. And the first of those is on the fourth level of this mountain, Mount Sumeru, okay? It's where it narrows the most. And that realm is known as the realm of the four kings. And there's four great kings that guard each direction on this realm. And if, let me just pull up something else here. Let me just, okay. Let me share something else. Okay, can you see this? These are the four kings that occupy that realm, if you will. And let me just expand this view. Do you see the four figures on your screen? Can you see them? Okay. So this actually comes from the Todaiji Temple in Nara. But you can see these very fierce-looking characters, right? They're actually, they start off, they're actually Hindu gods that have become associated with Buddhism, and they're the four guardians. And in fact, one of the oldest temples in Japan is called Shiten Oji. And this comes from this Shiten, what was it? Shiten o shiten. Shidai o shiten in Japanese. But this is the first of the terrestrial heavens, and it is guarded by these four great kings. Okay, and you see the two on the left here. Now, the one it's hard to tell, but so one of them has a spear, right? And is basically sort of almost saying, you know, you will not pass through me type thing. And the one next to him, he actually has a knife, but you can't really see it in this picture. I don't even know if he has it in the picture, but traditionally he's usually holding a sword. Okay. And then you have the other two, which are, the one on the very right is quite interesting because he is traditionally seen holding a brush and a scroll, okay? And then the third one is holding this little, this is a treasure box. And so holding all the treasures of Buddhism, okay? So these are the four great guardians. And so it's showing both a physical aspect, the ones that are going to, you know, guard with strength, and then there's also an intellectual aspect to it. And you can see them standing upon. These are creatures from the underworld, and they're basically standing on top of them. They're the pedestals of these for these guardians. Okay. And so that is the first of the terrestrial heavens, if you will. And it's the heaven of four great kings. Then the next one is called this, it's the second of the terrestrial heavens, and is known as the heaven of 33 devas. And if I go back to that other diagram. Okay, so at the very top of this Mount Sumeru, okay, so as I said, it's like an hourglass shape. And so it tapers in the middle and then it comes out again. And at the very top of that is this heavens of the 33 devas. Now, what's interesting about this heaven is that it's still attached terrestrially to the mountain. It's on the top, the very top of the mountain, right? So in here, you will have, I don't know how well you can see this or not, but you'll have these devas, because they're still attached physically to the world, they still have to quarrel and fight with others in the other realms. So you see them here, they've got a bow and arrow, and they're fighting against, so this is the realm of Ashura, or the fighting realm, fighting spirits. So you see them still fighting against one another, okay? So these are the realms of the two terrestrial heavens, if you will. And then above that, you have four more realms. And it's not really depicted in this particular picture, but some of the other ones, you'll find another Buddha in there. And if I can pull that out. Okay, let me just see. Can you see this one? Do you see this picture on your screen? I'm not sure if you're seeing it or not. Oops, I stopped. You can see this, right? Okay, this is actually a blow up from another, it's the same
idea.
Yeah, you can see it, right? Yeah. So it is the same tanka, but a different version of it. Okay. And so here you can see, so in the center of that realm of the 33 devas, the king of that is Chakra or Indra. Okay. But above that, you see another Buddha type thing that's floating here. Okay. So there are 4 realms or heavenly realms that are not, that we call these celestial realms because they're not right on the mountain. Okay. So the next one is called the Maya realm. And the Maya realm, because they're no longer physically attached to the worldly realms, they don't have to combat with the ashuras. Okay, so you see, this one actually shows a little bit of the bows and arrows as they're fighting with the ashuras on the side here, right? But this Maya realm, because they're no longer physically attached, they don't have to fight. And then the 4th realm. So this is where it comes back to the story of the Buddha. The 4th realm is called Tusita Heaven. Okay. So the realm above this Maya realm is where Sumida has now gone to. It's called Tusita Heaven, right? And in that Tusita Heaven is said where the next Buddha will come from. So Sumida, who then becomes a Siddhartha, right? He's in this realm before he is born as Siddhartha. And then once he comes down to our world, now presently it's said in this Tusita Heaven is what they call Maitreya. Maitreya is supposed to be the next Buddha. He's a bodhisattva right now, but Maitreya will come out into this world 10,000 years from now. And why 10,000 years from now? It's said that the Buddha Dharma is supposed to disappear. The Dharma, the teachings as we know it, will disappear in 10,000 years. And once that period comes to an end, then the next Buddha enters into this world, which is Maitreya. Okay. So interestingly enough, in this realm, Tusita Heaven, Tusita Heaven is also known as a joyous realm. Queen Maya, after she gave birth to Siddhartha, it only briefly mentions it in this book, but she passes away after she gives birth. And she actually goes to this Tusita Heaven. Okay. And then once Siddhartha grows up and becomes a Buddha, it's said that Queen Maya comes down to this terrestrial realm of the 33 devas. And so Shakyamuni Buddha goes and meets her there. So she comes back down and he actually teaches her the Dharma in this realm. Okay. So the 4th realm is this Tusita Heaven that Sumida has gone to. And then above that, there are 2 more realms. Okay. And I'm not really going to get them too much into it. The next one is known as the Joy Emanating Realm. And in that realm, the devas in that realm are able to create and enjoy objects of pleasure. And then finally, the 6th, the highest realm is called the realm of controlling others' emanations. And there, other devas create magical gifts that one could enjoy. And so these were called the 6 realms of heaven, heavenly realms within still within this existence of suffering. Okay, so that's where Sumida had gone to before becoming the Buddha. And what's important there is that when he was in this realm, when Sumida was in this realm of Tusita Heaven, just before coming down to become the Buddha, he expounds a teaching. And he says and this is the basically the original dedication of Sumida, where he says, and I quote, he says there, then the Bodhisattva, for the sake of the host of divine beings, expounded the teachings. All of you first give rise to faith, venerate the teaching, hold the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha in your mind, and attain the path of the sages, knowing that the world is impermanent and filled with suffering. Abide in the egoless mind. With peace in your mind, do not give rise to thoughts of greed. Ceaselessly absorbed in meditation, attain wisdom, and, using skillful means, guide those people who are shrouded by the darkness of ignorance. So this passage is the first expounding of, even before becoming Siddhartha, the Sumida is making this vow and saying to others, you know, listen, keep the three treasures, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha in your heart, and help others out of compassion. Gain wisdom and help others out of compassion. So right from the very start, from the get-go, the Buddha's talking about compassion, and it becomes a very important aspect of our teachings. It becomes a primary driving force for our actions. So getting back to here, so this Mount Sumeru, have any of you, or do you recognize this Mount Sumeru at all? Marilyn's shaking her head sideways, no. But in fact, you've all seen versions of this, okay? And I'm going to show you one version of it. Let me just, okay, let me see. Other visual images of Mount Sumeru. Do you know where this is? This is Angkor Wat in Cambodia, I think it is. Okay. This was originally built as a Hindu temple, but also it became a Buddhist temple. This is modeled after Mount Sumeru, okay, where it's said that in the center here you have the mountain. Now, the shape is different, but it's actually, this is said to be the center of the universe, Mount Sumeru. And then there are these four pillars here. This is where the four kings would have been at. And then there are other worlds that are surrounding it. And so Angkor Wat is one image of Mount Sumeru. Interestingly enough, there were Christian theologians in 1700s, I believe it was. They were trying to denounce Buddhism because Buddhism at this point still had, it was sort of like a flat earth theory where they believed in the center of the universe was this Mount Sumeru, and everything sort of focused on that center. And by this time, Christianity had accepted the fact that there were orbs in the heavens. And so some theologians were denouncing Buddhism because Buddhism still followed this ideal of Mount Sumeru. But back in the day of the Buddha, it was believed that there's this Mount Sumeru was sort of the center of the universe. So this is one depiction of it. But also more commonly, okay, I will show you. So here's a typical statue of Amidah, right? And if you look at the pedestal that Amidah is standing on, do you notice the shape? The hourglass shape, okay? This is depicting Mount Sumeru, okay? In fact, or in Japan in general, when you have the Buddhist altars, you have, this is actually, it was in the Calgary, the Bow Valley Museum. This was the altar that came out from the Raymond Buddhist temple. And the dais that the altar sits on, we call it shumidan, shumidan. And that it comes from Sumeru. Okay, that's a Japanese pronunciation for it. And if you look at it, again, it has this hourglass, it tapers off to the middle and then it comes out again, okay? And so a real good example of this is at the Calgary Temple, right? There's James Martin Sensei, but in the Calgary Buddhist Temple, their statue stands on this pedestal, right? And you can actually see the different striations. So this middle will be where the realm of 4 kings, and then at the top will be the realm of the 33 devas. So it's even though we're not conscious of it, we've all actually seen it. And to bring it home even further, this is our own temple, and it's not as pronounced, but you notice that this also has this tapered base, and then you've got the lotus above, right? So this also comes from that ideal of Mount Sumeru, okay? So this Tusita Heaven, where Sumida was, then from there, he makes that proclamation, and then he becomes, or takes the form of a white elephant with six tusks. And so that white elephant with six tusks, in the Indian belief system, the white elephant is a sign of purity. And also the 6 tusks, it's said that we call them the 6 bodhisattva perfections, paramitas, and they are represented by the 6 tusks of this white elephant. And he comes down from this Tusita Heaven and enters Queen Maya, where she becomes pregnant, right? Almost sounding like an immaculate conception, but most Buddhist scholars would hate it if I mentioned that, because they'll say, no, it's different, right? But this white elephant enters Queen Maya's belly from the right side, and then Queen Maya becomes pregnant, and then as she becomes full term, she decides she wants to go out to the forest for relaxation, and there she goes to this Lumbini's garden, and there the tree, Ashoka tree, is lowered because of the weight of the fruit, and she reaches up and grabs it, and the Siddhartha is born. And then from there, Siddhartha supposedly is said to have stood up right away, taken 7 steps, and again, points the right hand to the sky and left hand to the earth, and says, I alone am the world honored one, and I will rid this world of suffering, right? And that's a famous legend of the birth of Siddhartha. And of course, the Siddhartha, this legend is, again, full of symbolism. And we have the symbolism, of course, the 7 steps that Siddhartha took it was said that those 6 realms of suffering that I had shown you in that tanka, so 6 realms of suffering, right? And of course, the whole idea of the Buddha is to go beyond that suffering. And so the Buddha is pointing to the moon, that you can go beyond this realm of suffering. And so similarly, Siddhartha taking 7 steps is to signify that he will be the one that goes beyond the realms of suffering. And of course, it's actually said wherever he steps, these lotus blossoms form. Okay, and so hence our Buddha's image often has him standing on lotus blossoms, right? What's also interesting though about the lotus blossom is that there's several things very interesting about the lotus blossom. You've heard, of course, that the lotus blossom, it blossoms out of very muddy or murky water. It's not in clear, clean water. And what this is representing is out of this world of suffering comes the beauty of enlightenment of the Buddha. But what it also means is that suffering is a critical part of the Buddha's enlightenment. If there was no suffering, you don't need the Buddha. You don't need enlightenment, okay? What's also interesting about lotus, and I didn't know this until I looked into it, is that when a lotus flower blooms, it's different from other flowers. In other words, other flowers, you need to have a male and a female. And so you need to have something that pollinates it, right? What is it called? Pestle? I can't remember what the name for. There's a male and female to the flowers, but the lotus, when it blossoms, lotus flowers, they're complete already. And in fact, if you look at the center of a lotus blossom, the seeds are already there for the next generation, if you will. So they're complete as they are. As when they bloom, they're already complete. And again, that's representing the fact that the enlightenment, when the Buddha attains enlightenment, everything is already complete. So yeah, so the baby Buddha takes us 7 steps, and of course makes that proclamation, I alone am the world above and below the heavens. I am the world honored one, and I will rid this world of suffering. And of course, some scholars have explained this to mean the cry of a newborn baby is saying how precious life is, each and every life is. But in fact, we do look at the Buddha as being special, different from the rest of us. He, for a lack of better words, he is the chosen one, if you will. He is the one that attained enlightenment. And out of reverence, so this legend comes out of reverence after the Buddha passed away, out of reverence for the fact that those who followed his teachings believed that, yes, he, it wasn't the Buddha who may have said this, but it's centuries down the road that this legend grew to the point where they said, oh, the Buddha walked and said this, right? And that was all said or made out of reverence to the fact that we do look at the Buddha as being, or Siddhartha as being very special. Okay, so then from there, of course, Siddhartha is raised, and we know, as it says in the book here, that even as a young, or after he's born, one thing that happens is that there's the prophet Ashita, who comes to see. Ashita hears of this glorious birth that's happened, and he has to go and see. And Ashita, the ascetic, comes down to see the baby and begins weeping. And of course, he's saying, I'm weeping tears of joy and weeping tears of sadness. And he's happy because he knows he's carrying the future Buddha, but at the same time, he knows because of his age, he won't be around when Siddhartha attains enlightenment. So he's saddened by that. And he also makes that prophecy that, should he become the ruler of the king, he'd be a very generous king. But should he encounter suffering, he will go on to become the Buddha. So initially, the father, Siddhadana, is very happy to hear this. But as he goes on, he begins to worry because he realizes that Siddhartha is no ordinary son, if you will. Even at a young age, they are going to a festival, a farm festival. And there, Siddhartha looks at the birds coming down to eat the grubs that are dredged up when the farmer is plowing the fields. And young Siddhartha is lamenting on the fact that we take life in order to sustain our own life, right? And then even the Buddha then, at the age of 19, Siddhartha, the king decides, that he will have his son marry. And so they have this competition, and the princess from the neighboring kingdom, Yashodhara, becomes basically the prize, I guess. And nobody can do better than Siddhartha. So he weds Yashodhara. And they actually spent 10 years together, sort of blissfully. But even through that period, you hear of Siddhartha encountering or realizing that he has all this wealth and opulence, and yet realizes that this is all fleeting and impermanent, and that there's great suffering. And so even before he goes out the four gates, he's been pondering the suffering of the world. And so he realizes he has to leave, and he goes out. He goes out those 4 occasions, and the king makes sure that he doesn't see unsightly things, but inevitably he sees the old man, he sees the sick man, he sees the holy, or the funeral procession, and he sees the holy man, and he decides to undergo ascetic practices. So he leaves the royal palace. So it's 8 o'clock now. I'm going to stop there for today. As I mentioned, this is going to be a journey that will probably take, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I don't think that's really the point. I hope you are able to get something out of seeing those tankas. And I will send this information to you so you can take a look at it more closely on your own as well. If you wanted to unmute yourself, you may do so now. Does anybody have any questions?